Hi folks, Dr. Torres here from our facility in Murphy, Texas. Just wanted to give a shout out to all of you out there in our Imerus facilities across the country and introduce myself in video form. You may have read my mock code emails that you get in your inboxes every month. I hope you're enjoying them and taking advantage of all the educational opportunities that Imerus gives us. If there's ever a topic that you would like me to cover, just shoot me an email. I will be sending out some videos like this as we look for ways to continuously improve the patient experience. The very foundation of the entire patient experience is the value of empathy. So it's not surprising that it is one of the 5 core values of Imerus. Empathy is defined as the capacity to perceive and understand the emotions, feelings, and circumstances of another person. In other words, just putting ourselves in their shoes. There are 3 types of empathy that psychologists have defined, and they are cognitive, emotional, and compassionate. Cognitive empathy is simply knowing how the other person feels and what they might be thinking. For example, when our patients come to see us, it is really important that we understand that almost always they are in pain, or they're anxious or afraid about something. Emotional empathy is when you feel the emotions along with the other person, almost like as if they were contagious. And we've all been there, that when we give bad news, we feel sad because our patients feel sad. Lastly, with compassionate empathy, we not only understand a person's predicament and feel with them, but are spontaneously moved to help if needed. You are in the healthcare field because this trait comes naturally to you. In this video, I would like to discuss a psychological barrier that sometimes prevents us from showing empathy to our patients, or from coming across as if we are unempathetic, even though we do have empathy. This psychological barrier is called the curse of knowledge bias. The curse of knowledge bias is a cognitive bias that occurs when an individual communicating with other individuals unknowingly assumes that the other person has the same background to understand what you're trying to say. Or in simpler terms, we assume that other people know what we know and they should understand us. So why do I mention this bias as a barrier to empathy? It is because since our patients do not have the same level of medical education or medical knowledge as we do, sometimes this makes us minimize their experience, and it may come across as being uncaring. Let me share with you an experience from earlier in my career that really touched me and taught me about this concept. I was working on a morning, not very busy shift, and we heard a commotion out by the EMS doors. A woman was banging on the doors trying to get into the ER because she had parked by the EMS entrance, and she was carrying her baby daughter in her arms, and the child was limp and lifeless. And she was screaming to the top of the lungs, "Please help me, my child is dead, my child is dead." Of course, everybody came to help her. A nurse picked up the child and rushed over to the resuscitation area, and the mom followed. And just as the nurse was laying the patient on the gurney, I entered the room and I heard the following. One of the nurses astutely realized that the patient was breathing and just had a very high fever. And mom was sobbing. So she just simply turned to the mom and said, "Oh, it's just a febrile seizure, calm down." And at that very moment, there was just this mixed emotions that the mom experienced, because number one, she was just distraught. A second ago, she thought her child had died. And now she's finding out that the baby is not dead. And she felt stupid. She felt like sorry that she had made such a commotion for apparently something that she should have known was not as severe, which is a febrile seizure, but she didn't know that. So she felt embarrassed about that. And lastly, even though she didn't tell us, you could tell that she felt like we didn't have the empathy for what she had gone through, and it just came across in a way that was a bit hurtful. I gotta let you know that this nurse was a fantastic nurse. She was well liked, good professional. I would trust her any day with one of my kids. And the reason why I mention this is because just because we come across sometimes as unempathetic doesn't mean that we're a bad professional or a bad person. It's just sometimes we get caught up with these biases that make us appear to our patients as if we have no empathy. As medical professionals, you know more about the human body and human illness than 99% of people on earth. So just because you have this knowledge of medical issues does not mean that your patients do. So we have to respect what they consider to be an emergency, as silly or simple as it may sound, because they just sometimes simply don't know. How many times have you rolled your eyes when a patient has a fever and nobody has treated them with Motrin or Tylenol? It happens all the time, right? It's because sincerely they just don't know. Sometimes they're afraid that they may overdose the patient. The parents are afraid that if the child doesn't have a fever when they come see us, that we won't believe that they're sick. There's many valid reasons why they think that the fever shouldn't be treated. So once again, just respect their emergency and use your knowledge to teach them and to help them understand, and so that way this won't happen again and they'll be empowered to treat their family members and treat their condition. So remember, there's number one is that almost always our patients have fear, pain, or anxiety about a medical problem. Number two, they do not know about medicine or illness as much as you do. And if you remember these two facts, we will be able to show more empathy, which is something that, in all honesty, it comes naturally to anyone who has signed up to be in this type of career. I want to thank you for what you do day in and day out. It is difficult at times. We know that you're an empathetic person because you chose this field. I hope that this little tip will help you remember what your patients are feeling and what they're thinking. I just want to leave you with a very special quote. My mother would say to me, "Look for helpers. You always find people who are helping." To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I am always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in this world. The people that Mr. Rogers' mom was talking about is you. This is what you do for a living, and you should take great pride in it. I hope you have a great month. Thank you so much for giving me the time to talk about this important topic of empathy.